The action took place 5,000 years ago, in the era of the immortals. Two people were sitting on the ground in the lotus position, surrounded by green trees. Ming has a great talent, but a special mind, not suitable for cultivation, someone said. An elderly man with long gray hair and a long mustache sat opposite the same long-haired young man and said that he probably would not be able to move from the stage of cleansing the body to the next stage. The young guy, blonde, replied to the master that he knows patience and it doesn't matter how long it will last, a year or hundreds of years, or even if it takes forever, it doesn't matter. The old man replied to the stupid child that he was like his own son to him and he always took care of him. But one day the old man will still have to leave him. The master twirled his hand through the air and purple light seemed to pour out of his fingers and a blue crystal sparkled. He told the young man that if he could find the core of the mainland, then he would have a chance to break through. This path of cultivation facilitated their meeting. But alas, the core of the mainland is just a legend and perhaps he will never find it. 5,000 years later, in the huge mansion of the Yuan family, a young blonde man stood by the bedside of a sick old man who told the master that this disciple was no longer the same as he used to be, because his strength was fading and now he was dying. The old man can no longer serve the master. The young man replied to the old man, saying, Yuan Ju, you have already lived for more than 100 years. There is no need to regret anything. He doesn't blame the old man for anything and he can go with peace. It's not so bad that he will die of old age. The young man thought to himself that he had already reached the 99,942nd layer of the body purification stage. And although he was not aging, he could not break through further. He had already lived for 5,000 years, but he could not break through further. Over the years, he has seen a lot of different people who have stayed behind him or met their demise. But in the end, there was only one left, who continues to observe changes in the world. Probably all he can do now is to find the core of the mainland that the master spoke about. But he only managed to find the key. Meanwhile, outside the Yuan family's house, Yuan Zhengtian, an elderly man with glasses, a shirt with a knitted vest and a cane on which he leaned, and Yuan Chuda, a young girl with long purple hair and a purple outfit, were standing in the courtyard. She asked her father why Grandpa wanted to talk to that strange guy right before he died. As far as she knows, that guy is an intern teacher at Shengcheng University. Zheng Tian replied to his daughter that her grandfather was an entrepreneur, and it was only thanks to him that their family reached its current position. He must have his reasons for doing so, and they can only wait in peace. The door to the house opened and that blonde young man came out. He passed by the girl, and she asked him how her grandfather was feeling. He answered her without even turning around, her grandfather is dead. The girl put her hands to her mouth. She thought about how she knew this day would come, but she shouted to the blonde man to wait. In a rather rude way, the guy asked what she needed and turned around. Chuda said, when Grandpa was alive, he wanted her to treat the guy like a grandfather, follow him and obey him in everything. She wants to know why. The young man replied that she should not take these words seriously, because for him they are all just passers-by. Chuda shouted after him, can he just take off and leave? He must be stopped immediately. The last order was intended for the guards that surrounded the guy in a short time. The girl said that their family is one of the big families in Jingzhou, and he is the last person her grandfather spoke to before his death, so he will have to tell everything they talked about first. The guy laughed and said that if her grandfather had heard these words, he would not have liked it very much. Someone shouted that a guest had come. A man appeared with a cigarette in his hand and in a business suit and a jacket draped over his shoulders. 4 bodyguards walked behind him. He turned to the girl, calling her his dear, and asked if it was true that the old man had died and why she still hadn't told this news to her uncle. He lowered his round glasses to the bridge of his nose, looking straight at Chuda. The girl replied that he did nothing but interfere with their family and created nothing but problems, for which Grandpa kicked him out. How dare he come back here again? The man with a feigned annoying tone said, they say, the young, and they are already contradicting the elders. Looks like the Yuan family didn't have any manners anymore. He just wants to know if the old man is really dead or not. If so, then from now on he will be the head of the Yuan family. Chuda replied that only in his dreams. The girl's father told his brother, Yuan Bio, that since they were still fighting, he advised him to leave this house immediately, and not make a mistake. Bio laughed and asked Obret if he was crazy if he thought he could resist him. The man raised one hand up and a bright green ball lit up in his palm. Bio frowned and shouted that today he would show his brother what real strength means. He jumped high and faced his brother in a duel, where there was a green-orange light around them. Zheng Tian coughed and flew away from his brother's blow. The girl shouted with tears in her eyes, this is this picture. She rushed to her father to ask if he was okay. He only said, a martial arts master of the 3rd rank. Bio asked if they were interested in finding out where and when he got the 3rd rank. The fact is that he became a disciple of the King Lanshan clan master, Liu King Land. After the old man's death, no one in the Yuan family is his opponent anymore. They just need to surrender and give up control of the Yuan family. And then, he will leave them alone if they break their legs. The brother replied to Bio so that he would not be so self-confident. This is the main place of the family's business and he will not give it to Bio, even if he has to give his life for it. Bio turned to Chuda, saying that her father was so useless that he would not be able to protect her and her family. Zheng Tian asked his daughter for forgiveness, to which she said not to say anything more, because she would always remain on his side and the side of their family. Bio said that since they both wish for death, then so be it. Suddenly someone said he could fight anyone, but first he had to let go. The whole Yuan family turned back and saw the blonde man standing in the same place, still surrounded by guards, and asked to let him pass. The guard barked at the young man, because no one allowed him to speak. The master swung at this remark and hit the guard, saying that he had nothing to do with it, and therefore how dare he insult. Bio asked what kind of nonsense, because a Mao is a man under 100 kilograms and he can't fly away from just one slap in the face. The young man cleared his throat and straightened his tie while the man asked him if he thought which way he was going now, and how dare he interfere in his affairs. The guy replied that he was following the path of happiness, which everyone else stared at in amazement. The young man was finally tired of being in this place, so he said that if nothing was needed from him, then he would go home from here. Bio asked how strong he was and was told, a professional technical university on Happiness Avenue, and he is a teacher there. The man laughed at this and said that since he was just some kind of pathetic teacher, then why was he wasting their time? He ordered his guards to attack him. Zheng Tian ordered a halt immediately. He said, Yuan Bio Jr. Xuan Yuan is just a kid that his father wanted to meet before his death. He has nothing to do with their affairs. He should be allowed to leave. Bio replied to his brother that he was to blame for contacting him. If he doesn't teach the boy a lesson, then they will laugh at him. Bio snapped his fingers and the guards rushed at the blonde-haired man, because how dare he contact them? Let him go to hell. The blonde's eyes flashed yellow, and with one kick he knocked down all the guards that they flew away. The man stood in disbelief, sweat dripped down his face, and he did not understand how this was possible and asked the guy who he was. What kind of strength and rank does he have? Maybe the 5th rank, or maybe he is one step away from the master. The blonde man asked the man why he was attacking him if they didn't have any problems in common. To which he replied, what is he going to do? Because he is a martial artist of the 3rd rank and the guy will not be able to defeat him. The young man was surprised that the man was so strong. He took a stand and knocked Bio out with one blow of his fist, which already broke his face. He replied that he was a cultivator of the 99,942nd layer. Junior Xuan Yuan was already walking out of the gate when Zheng Tian called him and asked if they could talk, to which he apologized and said that they could not, because now he had important things to do and they would never meet again. Chuda asked her father why did Grandpa want to meet him. After all, he just took off and left. Her father replied that her grandfather always told them to treat him well, and he must have had his reasons for that. Their family is in a serious condition right now, so they will need a strong martial artist. So, they will need to lure him to the side of the family. The girl was surprised that the family was in a serious condition. Is it really that bad? Although their family is one of the biggest families in Jingzhou, but in comparison with the King Lanshan clan, they are like rats. Now that Yuan Bio has become a disciple of this clan, none of their family is no longer able to resist him, much less his clan, and they can only ask for help from Xuan Yuan. The man was already returning to the house when his daughter stopped him and said that since their family was in such a serious condition, then she would go and talk to him. She will ask you to help them overcome these difficulties. The father agreed and said that he had heard something about this university where the young man works, and would ask his friends to invest it. And then Chuda can also become a teacher there. Meanwhile, at the Vocational Technical University, in the teacher's dormitory, there was a girl with black hair gathered in a high ponytail. Teacher He King Mei talked to her father on the phone and said that she wanted to live in peace for at least a little and therefore asked him to stop calling her. The father on the phone replied that he understood that she was running away from marriage and he would give her time to think. He has already sent someone to fix the situation at this terrible university a little. And he also hired a strong martial artist to look after her and be able to protect her at any time. The girl stood all red from her overflowing anger from her father's lectures. She said that if that's all, then she hangs up. Suddenly, it was heard from behind that someone told the boss that she had finally been found. The girl turned around and saw the guys. One of them, with his head in pigtails, told the girl that he had to work hard to find her. She ignored all his invitations and forced him to come in person. Kingmei replied that she was not interested in the guy, so she asked him to leave her alone. The guys from the gang of the one with pigtails surrounded the girl from all sides. It doesn't matter at all whether she is interested or not. He shouted to his brothers that they could finally do it. The girl asked with fear what they were going to do and reminded them that they were not actually on the university grounds. They are now standing near the hostel where people often pass. The girl screamed that these guys didn't touch her. Yuan was walking with a jacket on his shoulder when he saw this performance and turned around, referring to more important things, while those guys asked the girl what if they were near the hostel. The guy with pigtails leaned closer to the girl to intimidate her even more and said that all the teachers here are scum who would never dare to get into his affairs. She doesn't think that any group of teachers will appear now to save her, does she? How naive this beautiful lady is. Yuan stopped and twirled either a key or a folding knife in his fingers. He wondered why he was being insulted again. The guy, seeing that the girl was looking behind him, asked what she was doing. Kingmei raised her hand up, thinking that it must be her new bodyguard that her father had told her about on the phone. He definitely has to deal with these bandits. The girl called the blonde to come to her in quickly, and to get rid of these guys. Yuan was surprised that they turned to him and looked at the brunette with pigtails, who shouted to him that if he came up, then he was a corpse. And he also called me a weakling. The brunette asked the girl why she thought that this weakling would be able to save her, because he is not even able to protect himself. He said, "Stop dreaming, young lady. It is unlikely that this loser will even dare to approach us. Just stop resisting and let's go." The guy grabbed her with one hand and held her chin with the other. He heard a question from the blonde man, whether he was going to kill him. Does he really want to die? Friends of the brunette rushed at Yuan shouting that this guy imagined that he was a hero. Now they will show him his place. How dare he interfere in Brother Zhao's affairs? He must die. The blonde waved his jacket and all the guys instantly scattered in different directions. The brunette called the blonde a bastard, they say. He learned a couple of tricks and already dares to interfere in his affairs. If they start a battle, the outcome will be the death of the blonde. Yuan took Zhao's finger in his hand, which he kept poking right in his face, and cleared his throat, saying that he had never worried about his affairs, but this was the second person who started insulting him for no reason. It really got to him. The guy with pigtails was sitting on his knees covered in sweat, with a menacing face, and replied that he would give him the death that the blonde so craves. And it's not that he wasn't warned. Yuan slapped Zhao, to which he asked how he dared to hit him. At this time, the blonde was hitting him on the cheeks back and forth. Unable to withstand such an onslaught, Zhao said that he was giving up, just so that he would not be beaten anymore. He's already sitting there covered in bruises and abrasions. The brunette came up from behind, and folding one fist into the other, preparing for a fight, said that now it was her turn. She started beating the offender while the blonde just looked at it on the sidelines. Zhao was lying at the feet of the girl and begged the young miss to stop beating him because he would no longer molest her. Suddenly, the girl's heel broke, and she was about to fall back when Yuan caught her. She did not expect this in any way, and only looked at the blonde man who held her behind his back as in the most romantic stories. Kingmei shook her finger at the fleeing guys, and shouted not to see them again, otherwise they wouldn't get off so easily next time. At this time, Yuan was still hugging the girl around the waist. The gang ran away flashing their heels, and the girl seemed to the blonde that he showed himself well today. Finally, my father sent a smart bodyguard, and winked. The girl sprained her ankle and asked the guy to take her to the room and then he would get a bonus. The blonde let go of the girl, as if he waved her off, and she almost fell back, not expecting that he would let her go. As a result, she still fell, and the young man shouted to her, leaving, saying that he was not interested in this offer. Kingmei shouted for him to come back immediately. What an arrogant bodyguard he was, and let him not blame her when he told his father everything. The young man was sitting on the floor in his room in the lotus position and was saying something about the last spiritual herb. It's already quite difficult to find one, especially a village. His cultivation is severely restricted without these spiritual herbs. Apparently, later he will have to visit famous families and bargain with them. The guy is sure that they still have spiritual herbs. The blonde man put his hands forward and a bright blue light with a ball burst out of a small vessel. He took this ball in his hand, looked at it and began to reason that being on the 99,942nd layer, he needed another 58 layers to reach the round figure. The path to the core of the mainland is too unpredictable and dangerous, so first he needs to prepare properly. The guy swallowed the ball and was able to reach 99,943rd layer. At a professional technical university, a young man walked with a book in his hands and reflected that several thousand years were left behind. And he continues to cultivate on this planet, while not getting old. And to avoid unnecessary problems, he has to change his identity every 20 years. He began to remember the past, where he acted from the shadows to influence the wars that arose in different eras. And now, his identity is a teacher. It is quite a non-stressful and easy job, where it is fashionable to relax and cultivate calmly. Suddenly, expensive black cars drove up, apparently worth at least 10 million yuan each. People wondered who had come in such luxury. One guy replied that he didn't know, but he had heard that the Yuan family's princess, Yuan, was coming to their university. Others thought it was a joke. Why would such a princess transfer to their university? Enough silly jokes. But the guy said he wasn't joking, and pointed to a girl with purple hair who got out of the car. Maybe she just wanted a normal life. Yuan was looking at the girl from afar, and she noticed him because he really is here. Suddenly someone shouted, "Make way. Don't stand in the way." It was a blonde guy with his gang of boys, and he turned to the girl, saying that he would never have thought that she would transfer to their university. The girl folded her arms and asked Qin Zhao that he was also at this university. He is the second son of the Qin family, and although their family is not comparable to the Yuan family, they are an influential figure. And yet this second son has a rather mediocre personality, and Chuda would never have thought that we would meet him here. The blonde greyhound Qin Zhao turned to the girl and said that he was surprised that she had come here. He invited her on a tour of the university, and in his mind was that he really did not expect that Chuda would be transferred here. Lao also pursued her, but she always ignored him. Now that there is another chance, it should not be missed. The long-haired girl turned away from the guy and said that she didn't need an excursion because she had to go to class, and in general, she had other things to do. She approached Xu and Yuan and pretended to be surprised at their meeting, calling it a coincidence. They met again and the girl offered dinner after class. The blonde man said that he knew what she had come for, and since they were not familiar, asked him not to bother him anymore. And he left. He thought to himself that even though this girl is a descendant of the late Yuan, there are tens of thousands of other descendants that he knows. If he took care of all the descendants of his acquaintances, then he wouldn't have time for anything else. The girl got angry and thought about how he dared to refuse her, and even publicly. The guy from the gang turned to his friends and ordered them to find out what kind of guy he was now. They are to steal the girls he liked, King Zhao. He must be tired of life. A bell rang from their speakers, and the blonde man was sitting with his legs thrown on the desk when his friend came up to him and said that he found out that this guy's name was Yuan Xiuanming, and he was a trainee teacher who arrived at the university not so long ago. Quite by chance, he was assigned to their class to teach two subjects: physical education and history. The blonde man clenched his fists, angry at this information. Just some pathetic teacher dares to steal his girlfriend. It's like I've lost my fear. Chuda entered the classroom, and the blonde man stared at her. At this time, the girl decided to attend his lectures, since Xuan ignores her. He will see what he will do now. The girl turned around when King called her, and since they were in the same class, why shouldn't she sit next to him? The girl rejected the offer, saying that she would sit in another place, and turned away. The blonde laughed and said as she wished, Chuda must have something to do with this Xuan Yuanming. But it doesn't matter anymore. He will make sure to embarrass him in front of Chuda. He shouted to his friend to go and at first just warn this Xuan Yuanming. The guy with the ponytail said he understood everything. He went to the blackboard and wrote something on it with chalk, giggling at the same time. The masterpiece is ready. He dusted his hands off the chalk and walked away from the blackboard, on which something was written in large letters. Some kind of insults. When the guy with the ponytail was returning to his place after the prank, Chuda thought that he wanted to create trouble for the blonde and she should intervene. But she would like to see his real strength, even though her father asked her to help him. However, Xuan Yuanmin is so young, how can he handle such ruthless ones? People like the Green Mountain Wolf, if he can't. Then she shouldn't waste time on him, and it's better to find other reliable practitioners. And as far as she knows, King Zhao's older brother, King Zhao, is a practitioner who is well even in the cities on the southern islands. One day, he single-handedly defeated 3 practitioners who had almost reached the level of a master. And then he broke their cultivation, arms and legs, and was extremely cruel. If Xuan Yuanmin didn't dare provoke even King Zhao, then his brother has nothing to talk about. And it is even less likely that he will be able to help them take revenge on Bio given the Mountain Wolf clan behind him. so it will be of little use to their family. A little later, a blonde man entered the office and the gang immediately drew attention to him with anticipation about the show that was beginning. The blonde turned to the students and asked who had written on the blackboard. The guy with the ponytail replied, saying, "Who knows, someone must dislike him." The leader of this gang turned to the teacher and said that he was starting to worry about him, that one day he might just be beaten up. And everyone laughed at the brilliant joke. The master took a brush for the board and said that no matter who wrote it, he did not want this to happen again. The main bully shouted to the teacher that the loser once asked 2 pathetic questions and began to erase everything from the blackboard himself. He said that from now on he didn't want to call him Teacher Yuan. Now he would be a rag teacher. And again laughter for the whole audience. Yeah, what a shame. And a great name. The blonde silently continued to erase from the board, not succumbing to provocations. The girl who was watching what was happening thought that anyone in the teacher's place would have fallen into a rage after such bullying. But Yuan remains indifferent. Standing near the already clean blackboard, Yuan turned to the desks and shouted for everyone to shut up, and since they were his students, he would forgive them for the first time and close his eyes to everything. But this is only the last time, and now they will move on to the lesson. He told all the students to open their textbooks and start listening. The battle between the rulers of Yuan and Caillou. Shuda continued to sit in her place in the first fifth and pondered in her head that the teacher reluctantly had to close her eyes, and it seems her father overestimated him. He must be afraid of him, his older brother, which is why he does not dare to contradict him. Otherwise, it is impossible to explain why he tolerates such insults in his address. The bully asked if it was exactly the first time. He appeared in their class like some kind of king. But in fact it turned out that he was just a rag teacher and a loser. Unable to tolerate such provocations any longer, the blonde threw his rag for the board with all his strength directly to the gang. And it got into the blonde man's mouth, plugging him. Everyone rushed to him to see what he was doing with this rag in his mouth. He just grunted at that. The girl was trying to figure out what it was with Yuan. Could he have done it? It can't be, otherwise he wouldn't have tolerated him from the very beginning. And besides, she was sitting opposite him and didn't see him do anything. The bully was sitting with a rag in his mouth and was still choking. His comrades stared and asked what he was doing when he tried to speak. The guys began to call for help, because their brother King is suffocating from an unfortunate rag in his mouth. The guys decided to help brother King with his trouble and tried to pull out the rag altogether. But no one could do it and they just shouted at the guy to spit it out. That didn't work either. And they started yelling even harder and thinking about another way. Kim Zio is going to suffocate now. The master came up to them and told everyone to calmly move away. He will be able to pull out the stuck rag. With one stroke, he managed to do what others failed to do. The blonde man flew away as if from a blow and sprawled on the floor like a star when friends ran up to him and asked if he was okay. The blonde just watched it all with an impenetrable expression on his face. Meanwhile, in the school dormitory, the brunette was asking someone again. She stared at the strange man and couldn't believe if he was really the bodyguard her father had sent. Penhai, a man with a bald head and a gray mustache, put his hands together and said that it was. Before coming here, Patriarchy explained to him that if she walked alone, she might be attacked. But the man assured Miss He not to worry because he was here and nothing would harm her. The girl put her hand to her face and accepted what she had. She sat down on the bed and began to wonder if her father had seriously done this to her. She was looking out the window but suddenly saw the guy who saved her from the bandits. Then he turned to the old man and asked that since he was her bodyguard, then who was the person outside the window? He replied that he did not know, but he was calm and prudent. He must be practicing martial arts. The girl stood up and crossed her arms over her chest. That day, the blonde pretended to be her bodyguard and threw that woman to the ground, and this is unforgivable. The old man said that since he had offended the young lady, he would teach him a lesson for the sake of the young miss, and turned around to leave. He shouted to the man to stop and he asked what she wanted. The girl asked him to just teach that guy a lesson and not overdo it, because he still saved her. And here's another thing. Let the old man let him know that she should not be treated so lightly. The man turned to the young lady and told her not to worry, because he would complete this task as soon as possible. And he left. Yuan was walking down the street past the dorm and yawning when a man approached him and introduced himself to Pen James. He said he was Miss King May's bodyguard and a level 3 martial artist. The old man thinks that the guy has been practicing kung fu for several years and should know the strength of a 3rd level master. The blonde man just ignored the old man and walked past him. The bodyguard turned around and shouted after the departing blonde guy how brazenly he left him, because an old man was talking to him. Let him apologize to Miss He right now, otherwise the man will have to teach him manners and respect. Yuan stopped and, turning only his head to the old man, told the man enough is enough. The man shouted, "Kid, does this bastard really want to die?" and rushed at the guy. As he was watching all this nearby, saw Peng Hai start attacking the blonde and said what a good performance. Yuan knocked the old man out with his foot and the bodyguard flew away, staring at the head. The girl did not expect this at all when the man fell right at her feet, with a broken face. The blonde man thought to himself that it looks like he already needs to change his place of work and residence. He's met too much trouble on his head lately. Hime stood with her hands on her hips and looked at this scoundrel. She turned to the man who was lying on his elbows on the ground and asked him how he was going to protect her without defeating such a young guy. How can she relax? The man replied to the young lady that he was careless and did not prepare for his attack. This boy has no skills, although he has a good cultivation base. However, if he fights him face to face, then the guy will not win. The girl was not happy with what was happening and saying that she had suffered all this, sent the man far away. She turned around and walked away herself. At that time, students were sitting in the school classroom, and the victim was blonde with a plaster on his cheek. He distorted the teacher's name, calling him the bastard Xuanyongming, and how dare he treat him like that. A friend with a ponytail asked Qin Zhao if he still wanted to take revenge on this bastard. If he hadn't pulled that sponge out of his mouth, the guy would have been dead by now. But he immediately fell silent when a friend shouted at him to shut up, because he wants to kill him himself and let everyone remember that he will make the teacher pay for everything. It is inconceivable to the mind how he could swallow that sponge for the board. This Ming must have done something. Not only that, he also hit him in front of the public. Unacceptable. The blonde man was furious. Yuan was walking down the school corridor, still holding his yellow book under his arm. It feels like he's not parting with her at all. He stopped when Chuda called him. It seems she has something to tell him. The blonde man replied that he didn't care at all. The girl asked why he ignored Qin Zhao's provocations. Is he really afraid of that? The blonde replied that he didn't care about the guy she was talking about. He has absolutely no time to waste on unnecessary people, including her. The master turned around and walked down the corridor, and the girl frowned behind him and clenched her hands into fists. She shouted after him to admit already that he was afraid of Qin Zhao. That's why he didn't do anything to Qin Zhao. The guy asked if she was really so worried about him. Did she think that such an insult would be enough to anger him? The girl looked at him and thought to herself that her father had probably made a mistake this time, and they didn't need a man like Yuan filled with fear. They need someone who can beat the frontal in this city. The blonde man entered the classroom and stopped, asking, "They say, is it really again?" He stopped near a small pulpit that was lying on the floor and chalk was scattered around. In a calm tone, he asked whose handiwork it was. The victim turned to the teacher and said that he dropped the table by accident, and the inscriptions on the blackboard. These must be the very inscriptions that he forgot to erase yesterday. And everyone laughed. Let the teacher not forget to wipe the board this time. Suddenly tomorrow there will be even more inscriptions. The blonde exhaled heavily and asked if they hadn't learned anything yesterday. The blonde man yelled, "How dare this guy teach him?" The teacher was leaning on the edge of his desk when he was told that he had better take care of himself, because with such a level of training, he would not be able to resist the blonde. How dare he approach him and fight? The blonde looked at the finger poking him right in the face and said that he would give the guy a chance to go gray. It is necessary to put the table in place and erase the inscriptions from the board. The bully asked what this teacher was telling him. Did he really want him, Qin Zhao, to fix all this? And he laughed hard at the whole audience. This teacher looks good but does not shine with intelligence. Since he wrote those words, he will erase them. The blonde slapped the disobedient man hard in the face on them, and he flew away with a broken nose. The guy got up from the floor, holding his broken nose, and called the teacher a disgusting bastard. Friends started asking if he was okay. The blonde ordered to immediately erase everything from the board. The guy replied that he was going to be erased. He stepped over the desk and rushed at the teacher, and they met with fists. Qin ordered to let go of his hand, otherwise he would cut Egon into small pieces. However, in response, he received another ode to a slap in the face, to the redness of the cheek. Then I also got a kick from the leg. The guy with the ponytail asked the teacher what he was doing, because Qin Zhao has an older brother, Qin Zhao, and if he contacts him, he will be in big trouble. And I got the same slap in the face from the blonde, who replied that he did not want to lose what he had just said again. They should immediately put the table back in place and erase all inscriptions from the board. The red-headed one with the ponytail said that they would erase everything now, and began to urge his obnoxious friend. The girl with purple hair couldn't believe that the blonde had done it. He beat up Qin Zhao's group and couldn't stand the insults like he did yesterday. Did he do it after what she told him? When the guy passed by her, she called him. She frowned when he didn't stop and shouted that she would apologize for the provocation about beating up Qin Zhao. She shouldn't have said those words to annoy him, and he should find a place to hide for a while. Because elder brother Qin Zhao is not one of those who can be defeated so easily, and it will be very bad if he suddenly comes for the blonde. The guy stopped and turned to the girl and said that when Sangji was young, he was a very sensible and intelligent child. And why are his descendants so stupid? He turned around and walked away from the girl, who remained in place. This made her very angry, and Chuda shouted that he himself was stupid. She thought to herself, this guy is so rude since he called the descendants of her family stupid. He even called her grandfather a sensible child, as if he was watching him grow up. What nonsense. She has to talk to her father first. The girl was walking down the corridor and talking to her father. Xuan Bingming had just beaten up Qin Zhao, and his older brother wouldn't let the blonde just run away. What should they do next? On the other end of the line, the man replied that Xuan Yuanming was her grandfather's dream. Even if she said that his strength could not be compared to the cruel man of the Green Wolf, ruler of the mountain, they will not escape from this disaster of the Yuan family, and therefore must protect the guy at all costs. Now her father will send her Mr. Feng. And he hung up. He called Feng Lao and asked him what he thought about Qin Zhao. A man with thick stubble appeared in front of the boss and said that Qin Zhao is a famous rising star of Nandao City. He can fight him face to face. The man replied that he needed him to secretly protect the young man under the name Xuan Yuanming, and he has to make sure that Qin Zhao doesn't touch him. Feng Lao replied to the man that then he would insult Qin Zhao if he defended this guy. The man ignored this statement and told Feng to go and do as he says. He will find something to avoid Qin Zhao. In the void, he turned to his deceased father, saying that he died earlier than they all expected, and he still can't understand why he said to be friends with this Xuan. There must definitely be something behind it. At this time, several bald men, including a long-haired brunette, were training in the courtyard of Qin. One of the fighters turned to this master and said that his brother Qin Zhao had been beaten at school. The brunette asked who dared to do this, to which the speaker in camouflage uniform replied that it was a young intern school teacher. What should they do now? The informer turned out to be just a huge bully who towered over Qin Zhao behind him like a big rock. His one-eyed boss replied that he could take on such a simple task. What he did to his brother, you need to repay the teacher tenfold. And the bully replied that he understood. The blonde man was riding on the bus and reflected that he had already used the remaining spiritual grass. Without it he would not be able to improve. Since he cannot continue to improve his spiritual herb cultivation base through large families, there are no other options at the moment. His development cannot be delayed, so he will go to the Tian Shan mountains in the suburbs. You see, if he finds the old spiritual herbs, he will bring them back. A big black jeep was driving behind a yellow bus. The bully in the company of two other guys listened to what the guy was telling him, Brother Lel, that the name of the guy who was riding on the bus was Hanan Ming. This bus is heading to the suburb of Tianshan. They need to chase them to get into the suburbs, and it will be easy for them to get him out of the way. Some time later, a yellow bus was driving along a steep road among the trees. The blonde man noticed something strange on the bus. I saw a man in a cap pull out a purse from a red-headed woman who was standing with a phone in her hand. Xuan started producing blue light in his hands. Since he met this little thief, he will teach him a lesson. But suddenly he stopped because a girl in a purple sweatshirt, Zhu Yiningni, shouted that there was a thief on the bus and pointed at him with her finger. The thief turned around and looked at the girl and began to justify himself, saying that she was talking nonsense. He was scared. He almost had a heart attack. The girl should hurry up and pay moral compensation to the old man, that is, to him. Otherwise, he would kill her, and everyone else on the bus will look at it. He will kill anyone who dares to approach him. People, under the fear of being dead, humbly agreed to stay away. The girl replied that he was not afraid. There were a lot of people on the bus, and this man dared to steal and brazenly take a woman's wallet in the middle of the day. She said, "They say, let's take him to the police station together." The man quickly changed tactics and said that he did not immediately notice how beautiful she was. The old man has changed his mind. Now he doesn't need her money. She makes him do it herself. If she annoys him so much, then she will give her body to him as compensation. The pink-haired woman shouted at him to stop saying this nonsense. Everyone saw that he stole something. Did you see him steal something? Then let them answer him. Did the people on the bus see him stealing something? Let those who saw his theft stand up. Two guys said they didn't see and approached the man from behind. Apparently it was their gang. They did not see the man steal something, and if anyone present saw it, then let him stand up and say it. All three of them laughed, and people just hid their eyes just to avoid getting into a hot hand. The baby did not see how he took this purse, and now the girl should apologize and go with him, because they will spend an unforgettable time together, and he will forgive this slander. The girl could not utter a word from amazement. There were tears in her eyes and she shouted that all three had conspired. The man laughed and asked the people on the bus who else could prove that he was a thief. He asked Zhu if he thought anyone here would be able to protect him. She is too naive. Zhu turned to the woman with red hair and asked her to look closely at the purse in the man's hand. He's definitely hers. She stammered back that it was like her. Can she prove that it's her wallet? The thief in the cap rudely called the woman and asked if she could open her eyes and see if it was her wallet. If she dares to lie and blame him, then don't let her ask why he is so cruel. The woman, under fear of a thief, quickly changed her mind and said that the purse was not hers and she had not lost anything. The pink-haired woman asked her again if she was sure that she had definitely not lost her wallet. It's desalinated her thing and she won't admit it because she's afraid of these bandits. If this whole situation continues, these people will become even more unscrupulous. The woman asked Zhu with annoyance why she was shouting, because she said she was sure she had not lost. If she said that, then that's the way it is and the girl is just wrong. Doesn't she see that she's provoking the bandits and endangering her and everyone else on the bus? Zhu, in amazement, asked the woman how she could change the truth and lies in such a way. The man laughed and said, "They say, sister, if you apologize well enough, you will receive forgiveness. She just needs to come over and be taken care of." The thief was already reaching for the girl when he was grabbed. The bandit and Zhu stared at Xuan Yuan Ming. The man ordered him to be released immediately. How dare he stop him in front of a good cause? Xuan replied that the man annoyed him and asked him to get off the bus, otherwise he would break his leg. The man pulled out his hand and pulled out a knife, while shouting that the guy had more than enough courage, but he would still kill him. The blow of the blonde fell on the man's leg, and it broke in half. Then he fell to the floor. Xuan looked down on him, because how can you commit a crime in the light of day and dare to be rude to him? The guy gives the guy 10 seconds to get off the bus and never come back. The man swore obscenities and moaned from the fact that his legs were broken. He shouted to his comrades to come up to him immediately and finish off this guy. The guys rushed at Xuan Yuan Ming and, calling him a snot and too persistent, began to threaten him with death. The girl was scared for the blonde and shouted to Mu to be careful, to which Xuan replied that everything was fine. When one of those guys swung at the blonde, he caught his hand on the fly, breaking his wrist at the same time. He kicked the second one in the stomach and he flew to the floor to his friends. The guy informed the bandits that they had only 5 seconds left to leave the bus, to which the man asked what nonsense he was talking about. Xuan Yuan counted from 1 to 5 on his fingers and notified everyone that the time was up. He stepped over the bandits who were lying on the floor and moaning in pain, and ordered them to leave the bus immediately. The thief and his gang no longer began to argue, and leaning on each other, began to move towards the exit of the bus. The man shouted to the driver to stop the bus at the bus stop. But while they were waiting for the stop, Xuan Yuan came up to them and said that the remaining 3 seconds were also out. The trio started arguing that if the bus didn't stop, they wouldn't be able to get off. He should spare them, it's not their fault. The blonde man smacked the man in the face with his fist and he flew off just like his comrades. He's giving them the very last chance to get out. Otherwise, the men shouted, "They say, bro, you don't have to finish, they're already leaving." And all 3 quickly ran out of the bus. Behind the bus, the same jeep where Xuan's pursuers were appeared. The bandits fell out on the road right in front of the jeep, blocking the car's path. The driver of the jeep noticed that they fell out of that bus and something clearly happened there, so we need to continue the pursuit. Meanwhile, the blonde man picked up the fallen wallet from the floor, and the woman with red hair has already thanked him and asked him to return the wallet, because it's her thing that was stolen by those bandits. The guy chuckled, "Is this really a woman's wallet? How can she prove it if she just claimed that she didn't lose anything? And I also told the girl not to put her at risk." The woman got angry and told the kid that she didn't know what was good and what was bad. But did he really think he was beautiful, since he had beaten those bandits? Tell her to return the wallet immediately, otherwise she will call the police. The girl turned to the woman as a sister and said that when the bandits attacked her, she asked to call the police. But she refused, and now, when her brother protected them, she is going to call the police on him. The woman ignored the girl's question and again demanded the guy to return the wallet. Xuan pretended to be a fool and asked, "They say, what kind of wallet?" The woman on the limit shouted, "The one in his hand." The red-haired woman called the young men petty bandits, and how dare they even talk to her like that? They are to blame for everything, and if it were not for their persistence, there would be no problems. Zhu tearfully asked how this woman could say such a thing. The red-haired woman told the blonde that if he didn't give her the wallet right away, she would not only call the police, but also accuse him of stealing her money. The guy gave up and handed the purse to the nervous madam. She can't beat those bandits, and don't let this guy make her afraid of him too. Yuan suddenly threw the wallet out the window and it fell right on the pursuers in the car. First, people flew out of that bus, now also the wallet. How lucky they are today. And the bully laughed. What a pity that the purse is not white. Meanwhile, on the bus, the lady burst into an angry yell and ordered the blonde to return her wallet to her. She has more than 5,000 yuan there, and since he threw away all her money, she doesn't care and she will blame him for everything. The guy warned the woman that if she dared to scream even more, he would throw her off the bus as well as her wallet. The woman asked what he could do to her. If he doesn't repay her now, then he shouldn't even think about survival. She'll put him in jail for the rest of his miserable life. Following these words, the aunt was on the ground outside the bus. She shouldn't have shouted so much. The pursuers saw a woman who was also outside the bus and were surprised. The woman lost one of her shoes during the flight, and the men did not understand what kind of day it was. Why do people constantly fall out of the bus? The woman stretched out on the ground and reviled the blonde as a little bastard. If he caught her eye at least once more, she would tear them out for him. How it hurts her. The woman almost broke all her bones. She was standing with Sadiki on her face, a broken nose and broken glasses. The woman got up from the ground and saw a jeep nearby, where 3 guys were sitting, one of whom was the same bully. She called one of them, calling him a cute nickname, Baby. I asked him to return her wallet because it belongs to her. The bully asked if this lady really called him a baby. Who is she anyway? The woman replied that it didn't matter at all. The only thing that matters is that this wallet is hers, and he must return it immediately. She was told to leave, because the purse, like her, fell from the sky. What fell is gone, as they say, and the wallet is now theirs. The woman did not let up, and again called the bully a baby with a request to return her thing to her, to which she again received a slap in the face and curses in her address. Does she still dare to demand something from them? When she was standing with her hand near the cheek where she was hit, the guys surrounded the woman and began to beat her. She was screaming and calling for help. Meanwhile, the bus stopped at the bus stop and Yuan Min went outside. That's it, he thought. Zhu followed him out and asked him to wait a bit. She had a beautiful gold pendant with a green stone in the middle around her neck, and when the blonde saw it, he was surprised. The girl thanked the guy, to which he only grunted. He kept thinking about the necklace and how she could have it. The girl continued to say something about the fact that there are many medicinal herbs on this mountain, and asked if he would also collect them. Yuan replied that it was true. Can he ask where she got this gold chain from? The girl took it in her hand, looked at it, and replied that her grandmother gave it to her. The guy was surprised. 5,000 years have passed since one day he came to the mountain to collect medicinal herbs, but was attacked by a monster of the 9th rank and seriously injured. In his memories, there was a girl very similar to Zhu, and she asked the guy if he was okay while he was lying in bed. He was staying and recovering at the Su family's house, and at that time there was a girl living there who gave food every day. Even though he saw through her, love was like a flash with a pink tinge. However, he did not miss his chance, and when his body recovered, to thank the Su family, he gave her this green medallion and said that if something happened, she should come to him and use the medallion as a badge of distinction, just so that she and her descendants would look for him in the future. The blonde was somewhere deep in his thoughts and did not immediately hear that a girl was calling him. She asked him what was wrong. This necklace was left to her by her grandmother when she was dying. She said it was given to her by the most important and unforgettable person in her entire life. She gave it to her in the hope that he would be able to find a love worthy of her. The blonde asked the girl if her grandmother had died. After all, when he left, he also gave her a Yangsheng pill, which cures all diseases and gives a person a long life. Usually, without incident, the person who ate this pill lives 120 years without problems. The girl said that when the Su family fell, she and her grandmother separated, but her mom says she died because of family problems. But this is not certain. She is not sure about her grandmother's death. Yuan called the girl a baby, and said that he understood everything. He asked her why she needed medicinal herbs. The girl said that her name is Su Yinging and she is not a baby because she is going to college soon. Su came here to collect herbs for her mom. She's seriously ill and they can't afford hospital treatment, so they're just trying to follow what the doctor says. He said to gather herbs at the mountain and return to continue your mother's treatment. The blonde exhaled and called the girl to follow him to help her gather herbs for her mother. He thought to himself that the Su family used to be very rich. They could summon rain and even control the universe. But a long time passed and the world became like smoke. In the blink of an eye, the Su family fell and its founder died. He met the child of this family once again, Only now he has remained the same, and he has changed. 3 hours later, the girl was standing and holding a bag of herbs. That was all she needed, and she thanked Brother Yuan. If it wasn't for the blonde, she doesn't know how much more she would have had to collect these spiritual herbs. Yuan said that based on her descriptions, her mother has a lung-related illness. To cure them, one specific type of herb is needed. Fire Ganoderma. The girl asked what kind of grass it was, because she had never heard of it before. The guy began to tell her that the fire Ganoderma is an unusual herb, and she will not be able to find it in the periphery of the Tianshan mountain. She has to go after him and then he will show her it. Earlier, when he was collecting these herbs, he came across a place with a fire Ganoderma. This place was in the heart of the forest and was very suitable for her growth. Suddenly, a bully and his gang blocked their way. He shouted at them to stop, and said that he had been running after the blonde for a very long time. This is his chance. Will the blonde man fall down and beg for mercy or force him? Yuan asked who he was, what he needed, and who sent him at all. The bully replied, "They say, a snot, doesn't he know who he screwed up? Maybe he should be reminded." So he's going to explain everything quickly to this boy. He provoked Kim Zhao himself. Yuan asked the name of Master Kim Zhao again, and said, well, of course, attack, and called the bully a bastard to boot. The bully called the guy a brat, and stood in a stand surrounded by his comrades. How dare this guy tease them? They'll teach him a quick lesson. The brunette standing next to the bully asked the blonde what kind of girl was standing next to him. Will he let you have fun in it? A fist was already flying into the guy's face when the girl shouted to Brother Yuan to be careful. But he defeated the opponent with one wave of his hand and he rose high. Then he fell to the ground, right under the feet of the bully, and began to choke on dust. The guy asked the trio if they would attack him all together or one at a time. This kid made the bully terribly angry, and he clenched his hands into fists, burning like rot. He is at the 3rd level of martial arts and the sea is knee-deep for him. He has been following Qin Zhao himself for years and will soon rise to the 4th level. The camouflage t-shirt on him was torn by the force with which he puffed out his chest in anticipation of a fight. The bully pushed off from the ground and attacked the blonde with the words that now he will see who is the real master here. His friends agreed with the elder, shouting that this kid would die because he didn't have the slightest chance against the best fighter Qin Zhao. The boss will beat him up properly and have fun with the girl. When the huge fire fist flew towards Yuan, he crouched on his feet and raised his ice fist, and they met in a fierce battle like fire and ice. From the force of this guy's blow, the bully flew back in surprise and landed with his back to the trunk of a tree, the bark of which strongly scratched the skin of his bare back. 2 of his henchmen stared at the elder with an incomprehensible expression on their faces. Yuan turned to these 3 guys and told them to tell Qin Zhao the following: he doesn't want any problems and let him stay out of it. Otherwise, he will deal with them once and for all. The guys ran away. They didn't want to run into trouble. Meanwhile, the guy and the girl were standing between 2 large rocks, and Sue turned to her brother, saying that there were some people here. There were a lot of women and men on the way, and the blonde offered to just pass by. A woman with gray hair and glasses called out to some Master Ma. Her child's illness is killing his lungs, and she asks to collect fire Ganoderma herbs for him. The man walking in front of her turned out to be Deputy Qin Glangshana Ma Khan. This man with a ponytail asked Mrs. Jiang to calm down because her son's illness is not serious. She is so impatiently waiting for her son to be able to recover, so he will definitely collect a fire Ganoderma for her and try to make sure that she really cures him. With a hand gesture, the follower of Maha El Jin Long ordered the 2 young men to stop. Outsiders are not allowed to enter this place, so they must leave immediately. The blonde man replied that he was going to the mountains to collect Ganoderma lucidum, and let them be allowed to pass quietly into the forests. However, the guy was immediately refused. Yuan told the one who stopped him that since he could not talk, he could easily shut his mouth. The girl standing a little further away turned to Master Ma and asked him what was wrong with this guy. It looks like they came for the fire Ganoderma. At the 3rd level of the fighter, his student will put the guy down with one hand. But, due to recent incidents, they can use it to continue their journey through the mountains. The guy can also help them get a fire Ganoderma. The woman replied that it was just a wonderful offer and told the guy that if he could get this herb for her son, then let him. But if something happens, it will be his problems. The guy understood everything. And as soon as this cheeky guy dares to talk in such a tone with the follower of the Mahal family himself, it seems that he needs to stretch his bones properly. The man with the ponytail was about to hit Yuan, but at that moment he was stopped by Master Ma. He asked the blonde man if he knew anything about recent incidents in the local mountains. If he goes in there, he could be in great danger. Shu and Yuan told them not to worry too much, but just let him pass on calmly. The master in response stretched out the vowels and said that if so, then let him pass. Along with them all, Shu and Yuan and Su stood in confusion, not at all expecting to be let through so quickly. However, the guy turned to the pink-haired girl and told her to wait for him outside and not follow him. She took his hand and asked him to come back, because she no longer needed any Ganoderma. The young man replied that she should not worry, because he would return to her very soon. Master Ma called the guy to follow them and keep up. After some time, a group of people in suits with a blonde in addition were walking past stones of different sizes, which were located one after another like a paved path, and Master Ma asked the blonde if he saw an island somewhere. On it, he will be able to collect the fire Ganoderma he needs. However, the road leading to it can be very dangerous. How about taking turns walking 50 steps at a time? The guy agreed, because it was the most suitable plan. Shu and Yuan went first, and while he was ahead, the master and his disciple were left behind, and began to discuss him. The student said that this guy is a complete jerk, and when he lures out the monster, they will finally be able to kill him. After that, they will calmly walk across the bridge without fear of a terrible monster. The master replied that with the help of this kid, they would be able to test what this monster was capable of. The boy has only the 3rd level. The monster will easily drag him into his lair and eat him there. However, only the guy himself is to blame for this, because it was necessary to think about the consequences first, and he clearly overestimated himself. At this time, the blonde met with a fire dragon and jumped over it without much effort. Shu and Yuan stood on top of one of the rocks and shouted to the stragglers that he had already walked all 50 steps. Now it was their turn to follow him. He put his hands in the pockets of his shorts and waited for everyone else to pull up. The men stood in disbelief. Did the monster never appear? And how could this obnoxious guy be so lucky not to get caught by a monster? Is it possible? Didn't anyone see the beast attack him? Perhaps the monster is still sleeping, and this is their only chance, because they will now be able to go forward without much risk. Everyone rushed over the rocks towards the blonde man who was waiting for them ahead. While they were jumping on the rocks, they noticed that there was no danger nearby, and when they reached the blonde, they asked why he was walking so slowly. What kind of old man taught him to walk so slowly? Suddenly, a fire dragon appeared from somewhere, very big and beautiful. If it wasn't so dangerous, the guys with tails on their heads were very scared when this earthen beast got out, because they were sure that he was sleeping. The disciples shouted loudly to their master to help them and save them from the terrible monster. Master Ma ordered the monster not to touch his people and attacked the beast with all his might. One of the students was mired in yellow boiling water and only one of his hands was sticking out from above. The master, drenched in sticky sweat, said it was too late to help him. The temperature of the lake is too high and even the water in it is decomposing. There is no point in saving someone who was dragged into the lake by the monster, because he definitely won't survive. The guy with the ponytail and blonde hair pointed his finger at Shu and Yuan and said that it was all his fault. If he hadn't forced the fire beast out of its lair, their brother wouldn't have died. The blonde does not understand why he can die so easily, but his brother does not. Why is that? The guy with the ponytail rushed at Yuan with death threats for his brother. Suddenly, his impulse was stopped by Master Ma himself. Since this place is not safe for them at all, first you need to move away from the island as far as possible. The guy on this order, which he did not like at all, swore but obeyed the master, who said that it was better to keep this guy alive, because they could use him for their own purposes. After a while, they were all walking on the ground. There were green trees around them, the sun was shining, and the island was left behind long ago. In the distance they saw a large stone rock, whose top was as if made of greenery, and whimsically twisted into an unusual spiral. One of the students shouted to the master that there was a fiery lingjai ahead. There were strange yellow-red appendages, and this lingjai turned out to be of the best quality. They were incredibly lucky. They will be able to give it not only to the Jiang family, but also to the Lord of the Mountain, who will definitely reward them for it. At this time, Master Ma gazed ahead intently, considering their next actions. Master Ma told the blonde that he clearly knows when to back off. If he wanted to collect a fire Ganoderma, then he definitely wouldn't have come out of this place alive. Shu and Yuan only laughed at these words, mimicking the master. He pointed to the same rock with a green top and said that there was clearly something wrong with that stone. The blonde student laughed at his words, because this guy made him laugh so much. He's just going to die laughing. It's because the guy is simply afraid of them all, that's all. Let him not come up with excuses, because this stone is the most common, so what could be wrong with it? He touched the rock, ran his palm over the stone, as if stroking. They say, you see, the most ordinary stone, so stop talking nonsense. But don't let him think that they will let him get away from here so easily. He and the master can calmly roll the blonde into a ball. However, something began to happen and everyone turned towards this huge stone, the top of which turned out to be not green at all, but a huge, simply gigantic, green snake. While she stretched out to her full height behind the student's back, he continued to say something about how after collecting the fire Ganoderma, he would take the blonde to Wolf Mountain. He would be his slave for centuries. Master Ma, seeing the monster of the third stage, rushed to his disciple and shouted to him to run away quickly. He asked what was going on, why the master had such a scared face. Suddenly he turned back, and in the blink of an eye he saw a huge monster. He started screaming and calling his master for help. But he didn't have time to escape because he was swallowed by this huge snake. The rest could only stand in their places and watch what was happening. The master couldn't believe that this was really happening to them. The snake rose up to the sky, eclipsing almost everything around with its light. When it moved on the rest of the people, the master ordered everyone to run urgently. Despite everything, Yuan stood his ground, not moving a finger. He considered this monster to be just a simple garbage. The master could not understand how this guy was not afraid of such a big and terrible monster that had already opened its mouth in his direction. The master ran faster than a bullet, sweating from head to toe, and thought that the monster was too close and would be able to catch up with him very soon. The master strongly stamped his foot on the ground, approaching Yuan closely, and shouted in his face that if he wanted to blame someone for everything that had happened, then let him blame himself. It's time to show what he's capable of. The master raised his left hand and his fist lit up with red fire. He stood in front of the young man, blocking his body from the monster, and ordered him to hold his breath for a short time before throwing him over. But suddenly he stopped, not understanding why the guy couldn't move. I asked myself what was wrong with this guy. He stepped back a little, calling the blonde a little brat. But he interrupted him, saying that he had to endure the master for too long. He grabbed the teacher by the wrist and dragged him away while the master struggled out of his steel grip. Then, Yuan threw the man up with a swing and he flew straight into the mouth of the green monster. In flight, he called for help, but no one could help him. The snake opened a huge mouth with sharp snow-white fangs, where a man could fit in all height, and with a loud slurp ate the master. After that, she hissed loudly, which is typical for all snakes. The blonde man stood, pretending that he didn't care at all about what was happening, and talked to himself about the annoying third-class beast. But he's not too annoying. When there wasn't much distance left between the snake and the guy, Yuan swung and hit the snake on the head with all his might, right between the eyes, and it flew back. The monster fights him with physical force. The guy jumped up high, as if he flew up, and shouted to the monster that he was too cruel to him. He is at the 99,943rd stage of cleansing the body. A huge fireball lit up and icy gusts of wind seemed to appear around the guy. The snake was split into two parts, and Yuan went on his way at a calm pace. But suddenly he stopped, turned to the snake and stepped on the body, pulling out those strange red-yellow appendages from it. No wonder this place is guarded by a third-class monster. He was holding these fire Lingjai in his hands, which apparently evolved into spiritual ones and can also be used for cultivation. The place where Yuan pulled Lingjai out sparkled, and he came over to take a closer look. A strange gray cube or box appeared from the hole, which the guy picked up to look at. It turned out to be a stone box, and it looks as if there is a weak seal on it. With his icy fist, the young man struck with this box, which seemed to be burning in fire, and it turned out to be a kind of battle of fire and ice. Although he didn't use all his strength, this box withstood, because nothing happened to him. So, this seal must be set by at least a Dao cultivator. It's been a long time since he last saw one, so when he returns, he will slowly remove the seal, in order not to accidentally break what is inside this stone box. The following are the remains of a snake. The guy directed his power at the monster and made a cut by sticking his hand inside. The inner stone stores all the energy that the beast cultivated. It's just a pity that the technique of absorbing such stones has long been lost, and it will not be possible to get this energy directly. He does not know what happened at the end of the Dharma period, because he was locked in a secret place. The young man pulled his hand out of the snake's body and put it in his pocket. He remembered his teacher with a long mustache. He was sitting in the same way, in the lotus position, and there was an ice cave around. Unfortunately, right now, the only way to use the beast stones is to use the energy inside them and help the cultivation process itself. The blonde man moved on. Some time later, the pink-haired one was standing near the entrance to the passage between two large rocks. She walked from side to side and wondered why brother Yuan hadn't returned yet. Suddenly the woman with glasses, who has a sick son, turned to her. She told the girl to listen to her advice. The girl doesn't have to wait for that stupid boy, because he won't come back. The girl objected in response and said that her brother would definitely return, to which the woman asked her if she knew how dangerous it was there. Those guys from Green Mountain are top-level martial artists, and how, in her opinion, will a boy who cannot distinguish between heaven and earth be able to survive there? So, she'd better just leave this corpse. A blonde man appeared behind them, shouting that he was back. The women turned back and looked at the guy who came back alone. The girl rushed at the guy because she was very glad that her brother had returned. She knew that he would be fine. A woman with glasses, standing a little behind, asked the kid where Master Ma was and how he managed to survive in that terrible place. The guy briefly told her that Master Ma was dead, which the woman could not believe in any way. The blonde informed the woman about their departure with Sue, but she did not like it and she ordered them to stop. Yuan turned around and asked what she wanted. She also demanded from the young man a detailed explanation of how it happened that Master Ma and everyone else died, but he remained alive. The blonde asked why he should explain anything to her at all. The woman got very angry at this answer and ordered her guards to grab the young man. He and Sue were surrounded by guards from all sides, and they remained trapped in the very middle. A woman absolutely does not care what happened to them there, and if he wants to leave, he can safely leave only if he leaves her these Lingjai. The guy asked why she needed them and in response received only a threat about a loaded barrel. One of their guards pointed his gun at the blonde and said that you can't trample on a gun. It doesn't matter what skills you have. The girl standing behind the brother asked him to give the Lingjai to the woman and get out of this place as soon as possible. The blonde assured Sue that they don't steal from anyone, and therefore it means that no one should steal from them either. The woman shouted to her guards that the guy was insolent at the end and let them shoot him immediately. Someone shouted, "Stop," and everyone who was in the clearing turned to exhale from the rocks. The woman shouted to the man who came out to introduce himself and he said that his name was Mr. Feng. The head of the Yuan family asked him to protect his younger brother. He really hopes that he will be received with dignity. After watching Yuan Ming for a long time, it was finally his turn to speak. He won't be able to explain to the head if something happens to the guy. The young man only chuckled at these words. He realized that it was this man who was following him all the way, although at first he thought it was someone from the Yuan family. The man was surprised that the blonde man knew that he was being chased all the way. Yuan thought to himself that this guy was like he was in the third stage of body cleansing. After all, Yuan himself is on the fifth, and how could he even find him? Let him tell his head of the family that he does not need any protection. Many thanks to him for his kindness. And turning to the girl standing behind, he called her to follow him. When they left, Feng stayed where he was and watched them go. At this time, a woman called out to him by name. Although the Yuan family has strength in the south, the Jiang family is no less strong. He won't be able to be in such great physical shape for the rest of his life as he is now. Mr. Feng told her that he didn't have to remind her about it. He is simply fulfilling his duty as a hired worker. A yellow bus pulled up to a stop in the city and the young people went outside. The girl once again thanked her brother from the bottom of her heart for helping her get the fire Ganodama. When her mom recovers, she will definitely invite the blonde to visit. The young man replied that he would go to them right now and see how her mother was doing. And in my head there were thoughts that these herbs are good tonics, but they cannot cure lung disease. Since they had met, he would go and see for himself. Some time later, a guy and a girl approached an apartment building where, apparently, a pink-haired woman lived. The guy did not think that they live in such a dilapidated house. The girl inserted the key into the lock and began to turn it. And when she opened the door, she shouted to the whole apartment, to her mother, that she had come home. She went to her parents' bed with a package in her hands and asked her how she was feeling now. The woman coughed and replied that she was fine. Sue suddenly remembered that she had not come alone and apologized to her mother, hesitating a little. She introduced the guy to her mother as Yuan Ming's brother, said that he was very good because he helped her collect spiritual herbs and drove away bad people. She took out a fire Ganodama from the bag and said that brother Yuan Ming promised that she would be able to cure her lung disease. The woman was very surprised, continuing to cough into a handkerchief. She has been suffering from this disease for more than 10 years and she could not have imagined at all that such a person would cure her. Dr. Chen also told her that she definitely needed to do something. There was a knock on the door and the girl rushed to the door to see who had come to them. It turned out to be the same Dr. Chen, a gray-haired man with glasses with a chain. He asked Sue if they had found all the right herbs, to which the girl replied positively. She collected all the herbs that he wrote in his recipe, and she also found a precious fire Ganoderma. The man thought deeply, and then, suddenly coming to his senses, he turned sharply to the girl, not believing his ears. How did she even manage to find these rare spiritual herbs? The man rushed to the bedside table on which they were lying, and falling to his knees, began to examine Lingshai. Watching all this from the side, the blonde grinned and called the man an old fraud. The girl asked the doctor if it was really possible to cure her sick mother with it. She started begging him to cure her. The old man asked again, who told her that her mother's illness could be cured at all. Doesn't she know that these spiritual fire herbs have a strong side effect? If her mom eats them, then she will be in great danger. The girl tried to prove that this is not true, because according to the alchemists, Ganoderma lucidum will definitely cure her mother. The doctor asked if she gave in to his doubts. If she talks to him in that tone, then he won't treat her mother. She'll just sit there and watch her die. The girl wanted to say something, but she was interrupted by a woman lying on the bed. She told the doctor not to be angry because Yinan is still very young and she didn't want to offend him. The doctor said that he was great and that her mother was not in danger. He would remove this Ganoderma. And as for the payment, then. The girl interrupted him and said that her scholarship should come very soon. She could pay for everything if he waited a little. The doctor openly mocked her. The people he treats pay him millions of dollars and pay most of his expenses. And she thinks that her pathetic scholarship will be enough for all this.